Iran negotiations on edge this morning after the U.S. conducted self-defensive strikes near the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. Jeff Paul is live in Dubai and joins us now with the latest. Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, good morning. And despite the U.S. carrying out those strikes last night in southern Iran, Gulf Arab states remain hopeful that a deal can get done. We know that a delegation from Iran has recently traveled to Qatar to continue on with those diplomatic relations. But within Iran itself, officials there say that these talks with the U.S. are proving a little difficult.
It is not the first time we are witnessing these contradictions from the United States. In fact, one of the problems in our negotiations is these inconsistencies and contradictions in their behavior. This is not a new issue.
Now, complicating negotiations, those overnight strikes in southern Iran. U.S. military officials say the strikes were carried out in self-defense, targeting missile launch sites and boats they say were laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. A CENTCOM says the strikes were carried out to protect troops from threats posed by Iranian forces. Now, while traveling back from India today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said talks were still ongoing and that there's been a lot of back and forth regarding specific language. He says it could take, quote, a few days, and that President Trump is either going to make a good deal or no deal.
The straits have to be open. They're going to be open one way or the other. So they need to be open. What's happening there is unlawful, it's illegal, it's unsustainable for the world, it's unacceptable. That cannot happen. The straits need to be open, unimpeded, without tolls, and obviously that needs to happen immediately as soon as anything.
Now, President Trump writing on social media, the enriched uranium, nuclear dust, will either be immediately turned over to the United States to be brought home and destroyed, or preferably in conjunction and coordination with the Islamic Republic of Iran, destroyed in place or at another acceptable location with the Atomic Energy Commission or its equivalent being witness to this process and event. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, Marco Rubio did acknowledge those ongoing talks with Iran that are happening in Qatar, but so far, no major breakthroughs to report regarding this potential ceasefire deal. Griff.
All right, Jeff Paul, live in Dubai. Jeff, thank you very much. Meantime, President Trump facing criticism from both sides of the aisle over the potential deal with Iran. Republicans like Senator Cruz and Senator Tillis warning the deal could be a disastrous mistake and doomed to fail, while Democrats, including Senator Van Hollen and Senator Murphy, are also raising concerns about the reported framework and the administration's strategy. GOP Congressman Derek Van Orden sits on the House Armed Services Committee and a former Navy SEAL, joining us here in studio. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
You saw Jeff Paul's report there and the president talking about unless the enriched uranium is turned over, it is no dust or no dollars. What is your assessment of where things stand with these negotiations?
Well, the Iranian mullahs have to understand that their window of opportunity is rapidly closing. And I have the utmost confidence in President Trump and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth to make sure that the interests of the United States and the world writ large are taken care of. That means Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. Let's remember, it's not just the 60% uranium. It's the 3.75 to like 20% that rapidly moved to weapons-grade uranium. So that has to get out of that country because these mullahs cannot be trusted, period.
Yesterday at Arlington on Memorial Day, President Trump addressed the main ultimate goal, which is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But he began honoring the 13 service members that have already made the ultimate sacrifice. Listen here.
In Operation Epic Fury, we lost 13 wonderful souls, wonderful, special people. These incredible men and women gave their lives to ensure that the world's #1 state sponsor of terror will never have a nuclear weapon. Oh, and they won't. They will never have a nuclear weapon. I'm sure you know that.
Not lost on me is that he is at Arlington, where there are countless brave heroes who were killed because of Iran's influence in places like Iraq.
Yeah, and listen, that's the real Donald Trump. Donald Trump cares deeply for our American service members and their families, the Gold Star families, and the weight that's on his shoulders is tremendous, but he's strong enough to bear it. We have to realize, I've had, I don't know how many of my friends killed and maimed by the Iranian regime, and I have absolutely no sympathy for them at all. How many thousands of American families were grieving over a tombstone yesterday because of the Iranians? So when things are getting tight, we need to look at these things globally and understand that this regime must never have a nuclear weapon. and that they've been a destructive force for evil for decades.
When you broaden the context and you look, because over the weekend on Saturday, President Trump talked to all of these Middle East leaders, particularly Saudi Arabia,
That's right.
UAE, places like that, where he is trying to pull them into normalizing relations with Israel, could be a potential massive game changer in the Middle East.
I tell you what, if President Trump can have these other countries join the Abraham Accords, it's going to move us closer to peace in the Middle East than we've ever been, certainly in my lifetime. So I commend the efforts of the Trump administration. I also want to warn the Iranian administration that our patience is wearing very thin, and that it's time for them to actually come to the table in good faith, which they have not done yet. And there is not an endless amount of time that they have to try to maintain what their control with the Straits of Hormuz and try to get nuclear weapons. The time is running out.
As we highlighted, there is a fair amount of criticism, particularly from Democrats, but also some Republicans. Ultimately, though, what is your assessment, Congressman, as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, on whether or not, if we can get to what I call phase one, commitments from Iran to do things they were never willing to do, will they follow through?
Well, let me put it this way. As a member of the House, I've lost a tremendous amount of confidence in the Senate. So when they're saying these things about the Trump administration not setting the appropriate framework, or they're worried about us being manipulated by the Iranians, they either don't know President Trump or they're focusing on the wrong issues. Why don't we get the Save America bill passed? Why don't we get the Farm Bill passed? Why don't we let these guys focus on more domestic policy and allow the executive branch to do foreign policy? That's how things are designed.
Congressman Van Orden, thank you for your service to our country.
You're welcome.
And also, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.